Hogwarts Legacy was actually surprisingly good. I say surprising not because I expected it to be bad, but because you could have been really lazy with this. It is a Harry Potter universe type game. You could have just thrown in a character creator and made it like a movie game where there's barely any gameplay. It would have sold a lot, man. It wouldn't have sold as much as it did, but it would have sold a lot because Harry Potter fans are sometimes insane. Okay. Now here's the thing. As far as Harry Potter goes, with me, I read the books as a kid. I watched the movies as a kid. I like Harry Potter, but I'm not one of those like super fans. You know what I'm saying? I don't have all the merch and crazy stuff like that. Even though I am a man-child that does collect typical man-child merch, Harry Potter is just not in that group of things that I collect. They could have been really lazy with this game, but they weren't. I mean, in my honest opinion, the world building, I guess, is really, really good. Hogwarts is very interesting, very detailed. It was actually interesting to walk through Hogwarts. There was never a period where I'm like, oh, I got to walk through Hogwarts. Now, some of the outside areas, maybe, the Highland areas, some could be kind of boring. Hogwarts itself, though, very, very interesting, cool to look at. And the thing is, a lot of people have said it's like a Ubisoft open world game. And to be honest, it is. It's open world. There's a lot of collectible types missions. There's, fetch quests and stuff like that. But the world is interesting enough to really keep me into it. You know what I mean? Far Cry has had this problem lately where I'm mainly just playing through the story, and I am one of those people, unfortunately. Far Cry is basically my Call of Duty. When a new one comes out, I'm gonna buy it, because Far Cry at its core is something that's always fun to me, even though for the past, 5 or 6 games, it's been like, I've been secretly hoping for a Far Cry 2 or Far Cry 3 to come along. I've enjoyed most of Far Cry's, but it is what it is. And it does share some similarities. Like stealth missions are just not interesting in Far Cry games, and they're not interesting in Hogwarts Legacy either. I've seen some people that do stealth runs because you can basically one-shot people. It just doesn't look very interesting. You'll see on Far Cry, you'll see these people that will basically raid a base and they'll do it all stealth, like it's clearly planned out. You can't really do anything like that in Hogwarts Legacy, so the stealth is inherently kind of uninteresting. And really, that's my only big problem with the game. I think the only missions I ever failed, I didn't die once in the game. The only missions I ever failed were stealth missions where I was basically just mashing forward because, dear God, it just wasn't very fun stealth for me. And whether or not you're caught is kind of like a vibe. You can turn yourself completely invisible, which you would think would mean if I'm kind of far away from somebody, if I don't bump into them and I'm not moving, they wouldn't detect me. But there's times where, say, I'm 5 feet away from somebody, and if they come up, like say I'm here and they come up here and then they turn this way and they walk away from me, they can detect me solely off of like a vibe. Even if I'm not moving, they just kind of like detect my presence. I can't say I agree with that, but I mean, obviously it would be too easy if you were like invisible. It's just, I don't know. It was the least entertaining part of the game. The only missions I failed were related to me basically just mashing forward like a child, basically. The only other big problem that I have with the game is the final boss, which, oh man, you really ruined that one, huh? You could have had like a Yoda moment where the goblin... Remember when Yoda in the prequels just randomly dropped his cane and started doing backflips? That was pretty sick. Some people hated that. I found that as a kid, I thought that was just the coolest thing on the planet. And I kind of thought that was going to happen with the goblin boss. And instead he just turns into a dragon. I've heard some people say that the fight is too hard. I wouldn't say that. I would say tedious maybe, but that's kind of also my own fault. With the final boss, there's 3 phases. In the first phase, there's one bubble that pops up. You hit that bubble with a specific color spell and the boss becomes vulnerable. Then there's a 2-phase one and a 3rd phase, and you get 2 bubbles on the 2nd phase, 3 bubbles on the 3rd phase. But in the 3rd phase, you're not fighting him off the edge of a cliff. He's like in your space, so you're dodging his AOE attacks, and then you still have to hit 3 bubbles. And I found that oftentimes I would dodge out of the way, and then my auto lock on would not lock on to a bubble, so I would just basically throw a spell out into the ether for no reason, which easily could have been prevented. There's a manual aim, which if I used, I definitely wouldn't have found the boss as tedious. But to be honest, the boss just had like a lot of health. Now, you could have played on story or easy mode. I've heard people that dropped it down to like easy mode just for the final boss. I didn't find the final boss to be very hard. It was just tedious. They were really spongy. and it was just a dragon. It just turned into, like, I know that sounds stupid, like, well, you'd rather fight a goblin? I mean, yeah, because a dragon has a pretty set, it's just a dragon, you know what I'm saying? A dragon's not going to be doing backflips or doing anything quick. Honestly, the Graphorn boss that you fight not too long before the end of the game felt more like intense because the timing for dodging its moves was way tighter. It almost felt like a From Software type boss because of the timing. And the final boss, I was hit plenty, but that's mainly because I was just like, oh, this is a bullet sponge. Whenever I'm dealing with something that's kind of annoying or tedious to me, I will literally put myself in more danger in the game and play like trash just so I can get the boss fight over with. I was getting hit by so much random stuff just because I was like, I gotta get a couple hits in. I'll just take the hit if that means I get to get a couple extra hits in. And I never died to the final boss. So the final boss, but the whole game overall was genuinely really, really good. I will say the world was phenomenal. Your character is OP, absolutely 100% broken, which I guess you kind of have to do. You come along, it's a 5th year, and you doing the whole origin of like becoming a witch or a wizard would be super boring if we're being honest with you. So I appreciate that they did that. But yeah, your character's OP. You're good at everything, and not only that, but you know how to see ancient magic and use ancient magic that can pretty much just one-shot regular enemies. You can also learn the unforgivable curses, which is very funny because you can use it. And you can use Crucio, Avada Kedavra. You can use those spells in front of your professors at the end of the game, and they're just like, I guess they just kind of accept it in the moment. They're like, oh, these are unforgivable. They're literally illegal. But, as long as you're killing them dirty goblins. And the whole point of the story is goblins, they want this secret power that's underneath Hogwarts. And there's a whole backstory about how the power got there. You have this witch that learned how to take away people's pain. What she was really doing is taking away their emotion, but she wasn't just taking away the sad emotions. She was taking away all the emotion, making them soulless people. She was hoarding that magic basically. And you have the keepers. They want to keep, I don't want to, play the game if you want to see the story or read a synopsis. It's not a super great story, but the problem about Harry Potter or with Harry Potter is that the main story is what we were all interested in. Fantastic Beasts has never been able to achieve that level of cool that Harry Potter was. And this happens with a lot of franchises. It's the same thing with Star Wars. The Star Wars spin-offs are never as successful as the OG Star Wars. We don't care as much about the new characters as we did the old ones. Same thing with Harry Potter, man. We know Harry Potter. We know his group of friends, Voldemort, those people. It takes a lot to make the newer characters interesting.